This episode is brought to you by CBUSA. For nearly 2 decades, CBUSA has been helping independent home builders better their businesses, and it all began with a group of industry leaders just like you looking to do just that. As the nation's largest group purchasing organization in the residential construction industry, they're able to bring home builders together to compete, frankly, on a national scale. By getting builders to group together, you're creating a buyer group that is now going to help you negotiate better deals and better rebates, even nationally. If you're a local builder here in Minnesota, you're in luck because CBUSA is proud to announce that in Q1 of 24, they're coming to Minneapolis. So if you'd like to know more about this journey and be part of the builders here that are going to have advantages being the first ones in, please reach out to Ryan Lipchek from CBUSA. You can also listen to his story on episode 26 of The Curious Builder. Tell me a little bit before we go into some of that other stuff. Tell me about your experience with the Builder 20 because I'm very curious.
Yeah, it's one of those things, again, that I didn't even know it existed until I went to the coalition. My first one was the financial meeting, which was petrifying. You have to give all your financial information. It's up on the board. You're compared right next to everyone else and just roasted by the accountant. It's incredible because now I know, my overhead percentage was way too low. That's why I was drowning. Like, I thought I had to do it all because everyone local, it's just him and maybe his wife helps out with stuff, and that's the team. And I'm trying to do these different things, and I was drowning and didn't realize, there's a reason you're drowning. You need to hire some people. You can't do all of this.
Welcome to the Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today, I'm joined with Meg Billings out of Twin Falls, Idaho. Welcome to the show, Meg.
Mark, thanks for having me. This is an honor and a pleasure.
I'm very excited. So you obviously operate Meg Construction, which is a new home building, mostly construction company in Idaho, and we met in California. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how we met at the Contractor Coalition? Because I think that was kind of a fun story for both of us.
Well, I think we met when I was this shy new girl with all the cool kids there, and you were over whistling like you owned the place, getting everyone's attention. If anyone doesn't know, Mark has an incredible whistle and isn't afraid to use it. So
I have three kids, and they do want me to teach them how to do that whistle. I remember actually telling them that it took me like a week to learn when I was like 12 years old. And I remember just spitting a lot. And then I'm like, do I really want all three of my kids knowing how to do an ear piercing whistle? But it does have its uses. One of them was getting everyone's, a room full of 50 people's attention. It actually comes in quite handy. So, maybe I'll do a side hustle besides the podcast and building, as I'll teach young kids how to whistle with their fingers.
Maybe you should keep it in the construction world. Like a good job site whistle, I think could come in handy for me.
I think it might be handy.
Turn down the speaker.
It might be handy. As I recall, so that was the Contractor Coalition where we had Nick from NS Builders, Brad from AFT, and Morgan Molitor from Minnesota with Construction to Style. I believe that was their second event, was the one in California in Long Beach. Is that right?
Yeah, their second one. And your second one also, right?
It was. Yep. The first one was in Nashville, which was crazy to think of. That was 2 years ago now. And time just goes into this warp. You kind of lose track of how fast it goes. And I just couldn't, there were so many questions, so many things that we learned, and the networking opportunities were just kind of opened up my world at that time. And I was like, well, I've got to come back for the second one. And that's obviously when I met you. How did you hear about the Contractor Coalition, actually?
Oh, my kids are obsessed with Cardinal crests with their funny reels, and so they were talking about the coalition and how amazing it was. I'm like, well, they're going. I need to hear more about this. And just like you're saying, like, so grateful. Like, it's a completely different world opened up. I couldn't even say enough. And I love that you went a second time, because that never occurred to me. When I went the first time, I'm like, oh, this is a big investment. I'm going to go do it. We'll be done. Like, I'll learn all the things. But I went that first time, and just like you're saying, it's a whole new world. There's so much networking. There's so much knowledge, things we changed in our business. And then you go home and you try and put all that in practice, which is fun and daunting all at the same time. But you get in it and you're in the process trying to take these practices and actually put them in place in your business. And it was probably like 3 months afterwards. I'm like, I got to go back. There is a reason Mark was there twice, because you have to learn about the world and then learn how to actually do it and practice it. And so, yeah, I went twice. So I went down to Phoenix to the next one that Brad hosted, and it was incredible. And you're learning a lot of the same things, but it grows every year, but you're just digging into it, you know, like I couldn't learn it all that first time. They said so many things that I was just taking notes like a maniac, and I'll look this up again. And anyway, so grateful that I
I've
went twice.
I felt like the exact same as you. I mean, the first time you're so overwhelmed with all the information, and I just remember taking pages and pages of notes, and then realizing that you almost need to book, months of time after just to try to implement it all. Because guess what? You take those 3 days off to learn everything, and then you come back, and shockingly, you have a job and you have other things that you need to do. So it's really hard to implement all those things. So I think the best advice I got was like pick 3 or 4, which I did not do. So this is good advice that maybe someone else can apply because I didn't do it. And then just focus on a few of those. But I look back now, 2 years since the first one, of how many things, not necessarily I've accomplished. I mean, I have, that's not the point, but like how many things did you sort of, or just because the knowledge was sort of taught to you, you sort of started organically adding it to certain things like changing your
Mm-hmm.
contracts. And I remember calling Morgan because I actually didn't know Morgan at the time. And even though she was in Minnesota, the state that I'm in building, and I called her and I said, it's a big investment. And she said, you'll make your money back in the first hour. And I was like, wow, that's a very bold claim. And I was like, but she had me because I was like, okay, well, I got to see that one through. And she was right.
Yeah.
In the first hour, they talked about some contracts. And now to this day, I've modified my design retainer. And the way that they kind of taught us about it was I used to always think you had to credit the design retainer to the end build. And the thought process was simply just brought up, well, why? You are basically doing that work for free. But, you can keep it like a separate contract. And then whatever you set forth, whether it's a flat fee or however you structure that design retainer, that you keep that's your time for the first 6 months. And it's not that, anyway, I think once you realize, a big part of it is just owning the knowledge and realizing like, oh, this is, as an industry, we have a lot of growth, I think, to do in terms of business practices, where I think we can learn from a lot of other businesses too.
Oh, I think you're so right. Up until that point, I was trying to emulate off of other local builders who were emulating off of their parents who did it and their parents, like there was just a lot of older practices, or it's almost like a culture even. Like, when did we think that we didn't deserve to get paid for 3 months of pre-construction? Like, when did that become a thing? And so I completely agree with you, where I think in the first hour, or and maybe not the first hour for me. I think the first hour hitting ground back at home, where I changed that one thing that I learned, or there's two things, it immediately covered the cost of it. So, and the future, I can't even imagine what a difference it will still continue to make from where I'm at right now, but night and
And
day from then.
we'll dive a little bit more into Meg Construction, obviously, which is what the podcast is about. But since we're kind of on the Contractor Coalition, it's coming up here in May in Minneapolis. So I'm for sure going to be attending. So that'll be my third time. Do you have any plans to come here for that?
I think I might get divorced if I try and fit in another thing this year, but I am
Don't do
dying. The
that.
FOMO is real. I want to be there. It's penciled in on the calendar, but
Yeah.
it's May. It's kind of crazy this year for us with our kids and
Yeah.
all the things there.
How old are your kids?
Ooh, I've got a 15, a 13, a 10, and an 8.
Yeah. So
So,
then I have it from there. I have 7, 5, and 3. So between the two of us, we've got
oh,
all the ranges, but under 20 by the sounds of it. So
yeah. I
wow.
I've got a driver this week, Mark. Like, it's snowing
Ooh.
out like crazy, and I've got a driver for the first time. It's going to change my life.
Just start calling them your chauffeur.
Yeah, seriously.
It sounds fancier. Well, one of the things, going back to the Contractor Coalition, what are some of so you had mentioned, and I know I've heard you talk about it, the pull plan.
Yeah.
Explain to the audience a little bit what the pull plan is. I haven't implemented it that effectively in my own company since then. I know it was really thought of very highly. We're doing one actually here shortly, kind of a mini version of it. But in your words, explain what the pull plan is and how it's benefited you and how you use it.
So we have a big focus on our trade experience. So building that team, making them be a part of it and own it in a different way than just showing up because Megan will pay you if you come. And so this has been a huge part of that. And I love it. What we do is we're about to break ground on a new house. Everyone has the plans. They've already bid it. They're familiar with it. But what we do is we have everyone come to our office that's on the structural side. So excavation, foundation, and any site work that's needed up all the way to MEPs. So framing, our truss guy will be there, our framer will be there, and they dig apart the plans because they've been over it and they can see the issues, but they don't talk. Like plumbers don't talk to HVAC. They just fight over who gets that spot in the utility room first.
That's
And
so true.
it's a full out battle. So we bribe them with food, of course. We have our Roberto's breakfast burritos every morning when we do them, and we bring them all into the office. And in my mind, I thought it would take a couple hours, go through it. They'll be there for 4.5 hours, and it's so impactful. Like they are owning the project in a way that I could never facilitate without having them come together. They're working out solutions together. We're marking out right on the plans who gets the spot in the utility room and who gets the spot um, over in our chase running through. And so they're working together, coming to solutions together with us there. And we're fine tuning this. It's gotten better every time, but we have two note takers now. One follows the design team who is also there. So we have drafting and design also in there, which is huge. So they're following the design team, writing down notes for any changes, anything that's happening. We've got another note taker following production side, and we just document like crazy all changes on the master plan and in their note taking. And it's been incredible, even down to like little things. Like we had this client who this massive light going over their door was like the thing the house was designed around. And we got in there, and because the design team had the full design package and the electrician was there and the framer's like, I've got a huge header. I got a 16-inch header going through there. Like you can't get a light there. And it was just as simple as the two of them talking. He's like, oh, I'll just bump it back a 16th of an inch, give you plenty of space to get that down there. And what could have been a huge problem and a terrible phone call to the client or a lot of rework was just, yeah, fix, easy, move on.
So basically you're getting everyone together in one room, your conference room at your office, or you're renting a facility if you need more space. I've often wondered about this. I mean, are you asking every single trade partner to come at one time? Are you staggering it by the hours? Or are you saying, hey, this is going to be rough-in schedule only? So it's HVAC, plumber, electrician, low voltage, maybe insulator. How do you break up all the people? Because one of the things that I'm afraid, let's say the insulator, and he shows up and he's like, well, I want to talk. It's no different than doing like a bid walkthrough with a remodel. You kind of want to stagger them a little bit so that they're not all asking the same questions at the same time, so you can effectively communicate. How have you handled just the amount of people as you're trying to pull through this?
Yeah, so we only go up through MEP, so insulation won't be there. Our excavator will usually pull off early. Excavator, flat work, they just want to make sure site work's good. Everyone's good with that. They'll pull off a little bit early, but everyone in between seems to stay. Like our foundation guy, he'll want to know if he's blocking out anything extra for the MEPs and that kind of stuff. He's probably the next one to leave, but he's there for a good while, and he's talking to HVAC and plumbing and making sure that we're blocking out for everything that they need, and that he's talking to our truss guy about the floor trusses to make sure that where he blocks out, that trunk is hitting there so that they can continue to run those lines. So yeah, we try and keep them all together. It's been really great. So I mean, it's about 10 people plus our team.
And are you doing this with the permit set, like already applied for? Are you doing it right before you go in for permit? And I assume, is this while you're under contract? So you've navigated
Mhm.
past the design retainer, or is this still part of the design retainer? You're kind of facilitating this as well.
We've done it one time a little bit early, and I didn't like it as much because construction's long and they do a lot of houses. And so those things, I feel like some of the information got lost and some of the steam behind it got lost. So we usually do it a couple of weeks before breaking ground.
Okay. Have you ever done one where you already broke ground and then you kind of do a speed up on mostly just mechanicals and plumbing, like concrete's already set and you're kind of sitting like we're in a cold cycle right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how cold it is out there, but it's been pretty cold here. So our framers have, they're not starting here for a couple weeks. And so I'm thinking now that we have the space to do it, that I think I actually probably will do one with the framers and as you
Hmm.
mentioned, all the MAPs. And so that's why I'm thinking about doing it in a week or two. So these questions you're going to inform it very specifically.
I like it. I like these specific questions. Yeah, we actually, that one that I told you we did early. I felt like some of the steam and knowledge got lost, and so we did a redo, a mini one with just our MEPs and our framer there, and so just running back through everything, making sure that everyone was on the same page and committed to the plan that we had decided on, and it was really effective. It was not nearly as long. It
Hmm.
was, yeah.
All right. Well,
So
I'll circle back with you. Are you going to the Builder Show here in February, end of February?
yeah, I'm
Okay.
actually speaking with Brad and oh no. Oh no, you're gonna have to edit this out. Alderview.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I did see that on a social post. Oh, that's great. What's the topic of what day and what's the topic? I'll have to stop in and listen.
Yeah, it's profitability. And I'm
Okay.
really excited about it. I think there'll be a wide range. Like I've had to learn a lot of the hard lessons in these last few years on the profitability side and really fine tuning things and focusing because before that it was just like, oh shoot, we made a mistake. It's all right. The house will sell more than what we planned on anyway. Just keep going. And so really learning those lessons of fine tuning and digging into that's been awesome.
Right. That's amazing. Are you doing most of your stuff as fixed bid or cost plus?
We do usually fixed if it's under a million, cost plus if it's over.
How have you handled, speaking of profitability, and I've talked about this on the podcast as well, trying to fix it now, but this was brought up as well at the Contractor Coalition, the difference between margin and markup. And how have you navigated that? I understand on a fixed bid it's a little bit easier because obviously you can navigate those numbers internally before you present it to the client, and if the client accepts it, it just kind of is what it is. And if you can make or lose money during the build, that's the risk that the builder takes. And I assume on a fixed bid, you're probably going to charge. I mean, do you charge a higher percentage when you're doing fixed bid because you're taking on more risk, or do you put some internal contingency lines in?
Both. Yeah, I'll charge about at least 5% more on a fixed bid, and then those contingency lines will for sure be in there, trying to
Okay.
cover
Have
all the
you had,
bases.
and do your clients ever ask you like, hey, will you do, or is it like once you go above a million, they don't have a choice and you don't really even get into the specifics with the clients about, hey, it's going to be 5% more if you do a fixed bid versus a cost plus?
I think it's gone a long ways just presenting something as this is the process. I feel like a lot of clients come in and it's a big scary experience. Like they don't know all the things and it's all their money. Like it's like a high stakes and they don't feel empowered. And so I feel like if I give them too many options or explanations, then it starts to muddy the water, or they start to feel like, oh no, am I
I've
making the right decision?
That's funny. I'm actually thinking about switching back to fixed bid, trying to make the process for the client and their experience to be smoother. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
for a long time, I mean, cost plus has served us well, especially during COVID when pricing, was escalating. We didn't need escalation clauses because it was in the cost plus model, so it was fine. But I find that it used to be when I first started my career. I've been building for 20 years. The first, let's call it 10 or 12, it was always like the boogeyman. Like you were afraid as the builder to show your clients what you made but you almost sort of validated their fear. Like they thought you were making more than you actually were. And then once you kind of own that message, you're like, well, no, we're a business. We have to make money. Here's what we're
Mm-hmm.
making. Every single one of them was like, oh, well, that's not really that much. And you're like, I
Yeah.
agree. And so then it helps you own your story in terms of being cost plus. But
Hmm.
in the last couple of years, I've charged the same for cost plus and fixed bid, and I would like to go to fixed bid for a variety of reasons. I think the clients can have a better experience, but the way it was kind of shared with me is a little bit more like insurance. Like, if you have a high deductible, you are taking on more of the risk, and if you have a low deductible, your premium is going to be more, but you have less risk. And I feel, do you feel like that analogy about sums up the difference between fixed bid and cost plus?
Yeah. 100%. I really do love that. There's definitely where the client is a little more fixed on their budget. I I don't want them to get into a cost plus if I can, because of that thing where I'm like, you just need to, where cost plus you're like, yeah, if you want this, I will do whatever you want. I'll do whatever you want. But in fixed price, you're like, okay, we've got to maintain this budget. This is where you're at. This is all you can do. And so kind of feeding those two different clients has been good for me. And I guess that's kind of why I'm still doing both, is I feel the same way as you, where sometimes it fits the house, the client, and sometimes it's
I
not the
think,
greatest
d-
situation.
don't you feel like personality wise, there are certain clients that are better for some than the others? Like I find that like, business owners, like they get it. And,
Mm-hmm.
showing them the full sworn construction statement and all 200 line items and, they understand it, like running a business. But like what other business? I can't think of a single business. Like if you go and buy a truck or a Ford or a car or whatever, I mean, are you going to ask Ford for an itemized list of every part that went into your car? I mean, that's crazy. And so
Yeah.
like, why is that considered normal in building on a cost plus model that you show them every single thing, all to really justify what they already know, which is like, we like you, Meg. We want to build a house with you. And like, the only thing you can really do through this whole pricing exercise is maybe lose them. Like they already like
Mm-hmm.
you. You're just getting 200 reasons for them to say, well, what's this all about? And what's this all about? Like, I mean, do you agree? Like, why is it that building, like, hey, here's every single thing that we're going to do on your house, and you get to, it
Yeah.
almost like we give them permission to run our business, which causes a lot of friction.
There is definitely room for that. And definitely clients. I don't know. I'm getting better at reading the clients, where we just had a prospect come in and she's like, okay, I need to see all the line items once a month. Let's do this report weekly. And of course we offer that. Like it's all in Builder Trend. You can get it anytime. But both Mandy and I turned to each other like, uh-oh. Like you just kind of start to get a feel of what clients are going to be
I
really scrutinizing in that, and just it's just paperwork. Like how much time are we going to be working on
it's
that side of
I
things?
mean, it's funny because Brad Levitt was so into cost plus. Like he'll only do now. Granted, his houses are significantly larger than mine, and maybe at that scale you have to because the things are taking so long. If you're taking 3 years to build a house or however long some of those monstrous homes are, that
Yeah.
might I could see why that would be prevalent. But I also think just like, man, every single time, just the amount of paperwork. It's almost like you should need a line item in your sworn that has like paper management or like file management, because
Yeah.
it is arduous. I mean, anyone that has done cost plus knows what I'm talking about. It just takes a lot more work, and not that you're not doing it as well, but it's almost like when you do documentation, you want it to be client facing. It'd be like if you were
Hmm.
going to do a bid or a presentation to your client, like it's going to be polished. It takes a couple hours to really polish off a bid and make it look really nice versus like, bullet notes or some sort of internal documents where you don't need to be quite as, market friendly, if you will.
Yeah. Exactly. And we do have a line item that gets put in
We really?
admin, which got doubled on this house. So
Oh, I'm making a note right now. I'm adding an admin line. I mean, what do you, what, well, you can inform my sworn, like, what would you charge for admin on something like that? Let's say the house is going to take a year. Like, what are
yeah.
you allocating to just, let's call it cost plus paperwork? I mean, that's because
Mm,
obviously I mean, this is a hard sell because if you charge, let's just pick a random number. Let's just say 15% is your GC fee, not including all the other things that are on your sworn.
yeah.
If you do a cost plus bid to a client and I sit down with them and I say, here's all the bids, and they're going to say admin, why is there $5,000 for admin? And you're like, well, because you picked a cost plus project, it's going to take a lot more filing and management to do all these reports for you. If you don't want to do this, you can go back to fixed bid. But then if I were them, I'd say, well, why isn't that included in your fee? How would you answer that question?
So we really try and focus on like what has to happen to make the house come about. Where like insurance is the same way. Like it's a weird one for clients, but I'm like, I don't pay that insurance money unless I'm building this
Yeah.
house for you. So in a $4 million house, that's a big price ticket on insurance that I don't want to pay for, like, and I wouldn't if I wasn't building the house. And that's been a big lesson for me, like sorting through those things, like what really is a cost of goods sold above the line, what is general, like, because admin's going to happen. I have to pay for admin, and that's not just for that house, but where, I don't know, like an example, we have some clients that want to do change orders constantly. And those take so much time, just like you're saying, it's client facing. So it has to be perfect, it has to be pretty, it has to look, professional. And so all those things go into it. And we got through this house. I'm like, I think we did 200 change orders. And if
Wow.
each one of those took, an hour and a half, even if it was something simple, like they're just switching out a light fixture, it still takes time to do all the paperwork on that side of things. So we've actually started doing a change order fee. So $350 for every change order, regardless of how big or small it is, just to cover all the time that goes into redoing that in our design books, getting that out to all the trades, getting that to the client for approval, job site meetings with them to go over it. All those things take so much time, where some clients will never have a change order, which is crazy to me, and I love it. But others, it's exciting for them, and so having a
So to clarify that, so when you have admin paperwork, so are you budgeting this app? Let's say your average home might have 50 to 80 change orders. So you're saying 350 times 80 and you're putting in a budget for it, or is the change order fee in addition to this admin line that you would have? I'm really curious
yeah.
because we used to have a change order fee. We sort of waived it because clients hated it, but that was back when we had the fixed bid type of thing. And I mean, what you say makes total sense. That I think explaining it differently, just like it takes a lot of time of procedural work to chase down these change orders. I think just really polishing that story. I don't see why a homeowner wouldn't agree that is going to take time, because I think sometimes you could be upfront about it and say like, hey, the change order fee, every time you make a change order, it's $200, or in your case, $350. Or you could put in the price, because they have to agree to it, right? You're going to say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you want to do, crown on your main level, and let's say the cost is 5,000. You add at that time $350 to whatever you're doing, and it's just in there as the lump sum. I mean, is there a pro and con to that?
I like the idea if it's something that's 5,000, but where it's just a light fixture and they're doing it one at a time. So I think it's more to dissuade them. We actually, it's not budgeted in. This is totally separate. It's on change orders only. And on the first maybe 3 to 5, depending on the client or how much trouble it looks like we're going to have with this, we'll actually put it in there. So on the first few, it's $350 change order fee, a little explanation that we can to reuse. And so we'll put that on there, and then we'll say waived by builder. So it's
Oh,
kind
so
of
you're
like a
I like that.
warning.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
prepping them. That's really smart. I like that. I mean, the other way to do it is, how like recess cans, they always go over on recess cans from what
Yeah.
you bid versus, unless you do an electrical walkthrough prior to start, right? So, let's say your home has 40 recess cans. Sure shooting, by the time you do the electrical walkthrough, you're going to have 50 or 60 cans. And, they understand like 40 were included and I added 60, makes total sense. They get it. You could almost say, based on the last 5 years of building, the average client does X number of change orders, 25.
Mm-hmm.
We will include in our price 20 change orders. After that, they will be at $350 a piece. What do you think of that idea?
I actually kind of like that. I think anything you
I mean,
can
you could,
do
because you
to,
could
like,
set, sorry, you could set whatever number you wanted. You said you're going to do 5. I mean, it could be 5, it could be 20, it could be whatever. You could adjust that based on what you think the client's going to do too, right?
yeah, for sure. I do think we're a little more expensive on that because we do have in-house design, like the interior design. So our admin time is also the design time. Design teams work on it and then getting it to the construction side and our side of doing it.
How would you hand an allowance in terms of change orders? Because the way I usually handle change orders is, let's say you have a $30,000 appliance allowance, and then you
Hmm.
select, your Wolf Sub Zero or whatever you're doing for your appliances, and let's say it comes in, not this case over, because obviously it's over. You add your margin on top of your change order fee, but let's say it comes in under 25,000. Like obviously in a cost plus model, you're crediting them the 5,000. Are you still charging them a $350 change order fee on that? Because they still have to make because I'm just anticipating an
Yeah.
argument.
Yeah. So that wouldn't be a change order to us. That we go through, we heavy load our pre-construction. All design choices are completed and signed off, usually around foundation. And so it's all really early. So it would be like they pick their whole appliance package. We order it right away so we can lock in their price and really protect them on that side of things. And then they come to us and say, I don't want that one. I really wanted the Sub Zero. I should have done that then. And so now we're having to go back to Ferguson. Hey, will you return this? Can we switch this out? What other models
So
do you have? And so
that make I
that's,
mean that makes sense. I mean that does seem to be in the spirit of what an allowance is, right? Because you don't want to penalize them for actually making their
mhm.
selection. I agree with that. And we've never charged a client a change order fee for an allowance thing. But obviously to your point, hey, I want to add a deck off the owner suite. I mean, obviously the
Yeah.
change order, and sometimes they get to your point, they get so big, it almost seems like it's sort of included. So let's say someone was to do something big, like add a well, let's just use this deck example. Let's say someone was to add like a $30,000 deck. Would you charge them a $350 fee on that? Would you just waive it and then include it in kind of your lump sum? Because it seems like once you get that big,
Oh,
it's almost, you know what I'm saying?
yeah. I don't know. You do it just to keep consistent, so it's training and always there, or pull it. I don't know. It'd be super easy to just pull it off of there. I'll have to consult Mandy on that. She makes all my
So,
big time
well,
decisions.
I'm just I'm going to be sitting in the front row at the International Builder Show asking all these profitability questions. So I'm just giving you a sample. I won't. I promise not to whistle,
Perfect.
but I
Uh-huh.
will be answering some of those questions. Well, I mean, I really was diving into that because you have to get some great insight on that. Um, Moving here to a it's funny we're doing this interview completely backwards. At some point we'll talk about what you actually do, but I wanted to go back to one of the things. So you've done the pull plans, you've obviously learned a lot about profitability from education. Are you in a builder 20 now?
Yes.
Tell me about
Which,
that because they talk, Nick and Brad talk so heavily about the Builder 20s. I've had the hardest time getting on their schedule. The group that
mhm.
I've matched with, because you have to go to the International Builder Show, interview, those people in the room. I actually think maybe you and I were in the interviewing
Yeah, we
at the
were.
same time, right? And I
Yes.
found I found a group I really liked, and I want to go with them, but they don't schedule far enough advance, and my schedule keeps filling up. So now I still haven't even been able to
Oh,
go to one, and so I'm
got
hoping
it.
this spring I can go to one. But to your point about you can't come to the contractor coalition in Minneapolis because your husband might leave you. As between the podcast and the Builder 20 and some of the other
Mhm.
initiatives I'm doing, it turns out this little tiny small little local builder in Minnesota, and same with Twin Falls. All of a sudden, you're going all over the country because our network has expanded, and I'm sure our
Mhm.
spouses are like, "Hey, I thought we married a local person that was going to be home at 5:30 for dinner, and why are you gone on weekends? And if you're doing brand sponsorships, like why are you traveling to go do video content, across the country?" And you're like, it's just kind of the new world we live in. But tell me a little bit before we go into some of that other stuff. Tell me about your experience with the Builder 20 because I'm very curious.
Yeah, it's one of those things again that I didn't even know it existed till I went to the coalition, and that was one of the things that they brought up and taught us about. So I never would have known to like sprint down the hallways with you guys to get to the Builder 20 interviews and scan the lists on the wall to see what availabilities there were, and yeah, would have had no idea. And it's incredible. It is really tough. Like the interview process, you're doing multiple interviews before you go to your first one. And that's a 3-day interview, day and night. And it's like jam packed, just like the coalition. It's just like 7 a.m. till 11 p.m. There is just like, and you don't want to miss anything. You like, I'm like, I could leave and go home, but they're talking about their cost plus method. And it's just, everything is so transparent. Like anything you've ever wanted to know that you couldn't ask, like they can just like blankly say, how much did you make in revenue last year? How much did you make in profit? How much did you like? It's just like nothing is off the table, and it's incredible. And it's like a family of people that like really really want you to succeed, and they're doing bigger and better things than you and bringing you up, and you've got a goal buddy, and you've got all this accountability. My first one was the financial meeting, which was petrifying. They like you have to give all your financial information. It's up on the board. You're compared right next to everyone else and just roasted by the accountant. It's incredible because now I know, oh, my overhead percentage was way too low. That's why I was drowning. Like I thought I had to do it all because everyone local, it's just him and maybe his wife helps out with stuff, and that's the team. And I am trying to do these different things, and I was drowning and didn't realize, oh, there's a reason you're drowning. You need to hire some people. You can't do all of this. And so it's it's been incredible. And yeah, just like I was saying, like they really want you to succeed. Like, one of them had um kicked a habit, and they were just like all cheering and clapping, and like it wasn't even builder related, but it really does become a team. And then you just have that resource. All I can send off a question at any time. You get like 5 immediate responses from incredible builders. So I can you tell I'm a little bit geeky about this?
I mean,
I really do love it.
I'm envious. I want to be part of a part of the group. I just need to find my group and get in with them. So hopefully this spring one pays off. I love
Yeah.
that. Just reach out to them again. This episode is brought to you by Adaptive, the software for builders that automates draws, budgets, and bookkeeping with AI. For over a year now, I've been partnered with Adaptive, and they've just been an amazing game changer in terms of efficiency in our time and all our bookkeeping. From the time we get an invoice, we import it into their system. The AI codes it, cost codes it, job codes it. All we have to do is review it, pass it through the people internally in the office, all digitally, and then it gets approved and paid all via ACH. It's becoming extremely fast and saving us countless hours a day and a week. When it comes to draws, all of our budgets now are set in Adaptive as well. So now when we cost code against the draws, we can do our change orders, and then with a click of a button, we can submit these draws to our title companies or to our homeowners for faster payment. If you're looking to save time, and if you're looking to be accurate, I highly recommend Adaptive. Additionally, if you'd like to listen to one of their founders share the story of Adaptive, you can listen to episode number 15 on the Curious Builder Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Pella Northland. For 19 and a half years, I've been building homes, and 95% of all of my homes have used Pella windows. I couldn't be happier to call them a partner in our builds and our remodels. Whether you're an architect, a designer, or a remodeler, I'd highly recommend Pella windows. They can fit old homes, new homes, reclaimed, commercial, and really everything in between. Pella is a company that we trust and that we recommend to our clients. Additionally, in management, Peter and Ed have just been absolute fantastic people to work with, as well as mentors to me personally. So when it comes time to look for a window, I'd highly recommend Pella Windows. Find more at PellaNorthland.com. Also, if you're interested, you can hear episode 1 where I interview Peter and Ed together for a great listen on business and Pella Windows. We talked a little bit about, well, I just referenced it, brand partnerships. I was down, actually, Brad and I were down shooting a Pella ambassador shoot for Pella in, was it June or July? And it was so cool because you were there. And it's funny because Brad came over and he goes, "Hey, guess who's in the conference room over there?" And I was like, "Who?" And you're like, "Meg Billings." I'm like, "Oh," I said, "Here, get your camera. You got to film this." And so it was just completely spur of the moment. I think I sent you the video after. I came busting into your, I don't know what, hopefully you guys weren't doing anything too serious. Like, and I just like ran over and gave you a big hug. But I think really just speaking to the community that is out there when you find people that are passionate about what they do, but just, good people. And it was just so fun to see you in an unexpected place.
Oh, what are the chances? I still can't get over it. And I'm from Alaska, and in Alaska, we're not really great huggers. It's not like our like forte. And I always get teased. Anyway, the team got a hold of that video, had it up on the big TV in our conference room, and they were critiquing my hugging.
Oh, funny.
Yeah,
Did you
yeah,
get a passing grade?
yeah, I did. And yeah,
See,
I'm very, very proud of that.
it was impromptu. See, there was a big bear running at you, and you harness your inner Alaska. I can stab him, shoot him with a sawed-off shotgun, or hug the
Uh-huh.
bear.
Or her.
So, yeah. So thanks for hugging the bear. Out of curiosity, where in Alaska were you from?
Anchorage and then Kenai Peninsula.
Yeah, my
So,
sister moved to Petersburg out of college. She's a
oh,
hydrologist, and yeah, it turns out it rains 5 times more than Seattle there. She
y-
called me like after a year of living up there, and she said she sleeps with earplugs in because it rains so loud it wakes her up. It's like, whoa, that's intense
oh,
amount of water. And then I have family that lives in Juneau as well, so I love Alaska, but I've not actually been up. I've not been up to like my dad climbed part of Denali years ago when I was a little kid, and so
uh-huh.
I do want to get up there and explore a little bit when the kids are older, maybe do some mountaineering.
Oh, you gotta go.
Tell us about your story. I've heard it, and so I won't couch it, but your becoming a builder story might be one of the best becoming a builder stories that I've ever heard of. So I'll preface it with this: that you hired someone to build your home, and tell us what happened after that because it's a pretty amazing journey to where you're at today.
Yeah. So I did manufacturing engineering. So I got to learn Revit and ArchiCAD, all the 3D programs. So I was so excited to design my own home. Like that was all the excitement. This was going to be our dream home. I poured over those plans, just every detail. So excited. And we got our foundation in, and all of a sudden, our builder went quiet. And he is the best guy, and he is doing fine now. And anyway, we love him. But he had a medical thing come up, and he was just gone out of it, like no contact. And so now I know like there were probably some other steps I could have taken, but in my mind at the time, I'm like, it's me or him. This has got to happen. And so I just started catching the guy that was there, asking a bazillion questions, and then asking, hey, who usually comes after you when this builder is building? And so I just started generaling it. No license, no nothing. And luckily he like kept paying everyone.
So were you speaking of that, were you still paying him monthly? You had given him a large payment. You said that he was paying them. How did that work?
So I had a construction loan, so it was still pulling the draws. No one complained, so I think all that kept moving. But I should find out more. This is the first time I've talked about that one.
We
Yeah,
should sit down and
it
do.
happened.
I mean that it'd be really interesting because I imagine a number of those trade partners you still work with now within your company. Or
Mhm.
it'd be interesting to hear. Do you ever talk back like, hey, because how long have you been building now?
So that house was like 7, 8 years ago, and I'm 5, 6 years into building on my own license.
It'd be curious to know. Yeah, I just have been kept building without a license. Hopefully the other builder still
Hopefully
pays
they
your bills.
paid.
Hey, if you can find a builder to pay your bills, you might be onto something. No wonder you're teaching a class
Yeah.
about profitability. So I think my favorite story I heard because I listened to your interview with Brad about you were like you said you knew you had a problem when you were like in the crawl space answering emails. Was that to get away from the kids so you could actually answer the
Oh,
emails, or like you were a mom of four? I assume you either had a job or you were staying home with the kids. But like how did you manage all of this stuff and also become a builder at the same time?
well, you definitely have to love it. Like building isn't easy, and I loved it. Like grew up around it, not in it, but around it, doing things and just the creative side of it. I don't know. I loved it from the very beginning. See, there has to be that there. But I spent probably 3 days a week at Chick-fil-A in the back corner with my laptop and all my kids in the play, what do you call it, the little playground thing. And that was my office, and it worked out really well. There'd be new kids every time, so they'd get new friends, and I'm sure they got sick all the time because of it. But it was really a great learning process, and it was insane and crazy and really hard, but I loved it. The crawl space that came later when I realized I should probably hire someone if I'm hiding in the crawl space right now. Like it's pitch black, just on my phone trying to catch up on emails before I get in trouble with one more person and can't show my face up there because they'll start asking me questions again. So I'll just stay down
I,
here, rest my head on a good footing, and
I mean, that's an amazing story. I hope you've leveraged that with like brands. And I know we can talk maybe a little bit about some of your brand deals or some of the stuff that you're trying to pursue. I actually don't know about them, but I've heard that secondhand that you're kind of going down that road because if this tells me one thing about you is that you have a high degree of perseverance because I'm thinking about like, something breaks, like especially in the beginning, this is almost a key. Cause like if it's only foundation, this would be like, you're on the runway, you're going to like leave for, New Zealand, and like the pilots are all like, yeah, we're gone, we're sick, we're gonna leave, and everyone on the airplane's like, and Meg is like, I'll fly the airplane, that's fine. If everyone could
true.
maybe do the food service. I just love just your attitude of just getting after it and finishing it. Like that was the only option, was to go through it. It kind of reminds me of like, you ever heard the stories of like the conquistadors of old, where if you're gonna get your people really motivated, you burn all the ships and you got to march across the land. That was kind of like you. You're just like, well, this is
Yeah,
the only opportunity, so who's coming with me?
yeah, exactly.
Well,
Oh man,
that
but I never would have gotten this. Like
no.
I love what I do so much, and if that experience hadn't have happened, I don't think I ever would have stumbled into this industry. Like I had my engineering degree, I probably would have pursued something with that, and I'm so glad that it happened the way that it did. And so glad that those trades respected that builder enough to keep plowing along with some random girl calling out of nowhere, like, hey, you want to go frame a house? I don't know anything, but I've got a house. Will you come frame this?
What's
So,
out of curiosity? What's the population of Twin Falls?
we're like 80,000
Okay.
around our area. Yeah, we're pretty small.
Okay, that was going to be my question. Like with that being in mind, is it a smaller community, so there'd be more likely? I mean, I guess if you're in a bigger community, you have more resources to help. In a smaller community, there might be more familiarity and more of a, hey, this is in our backyard, we're going to do this together kind of mentality.
I think a little bit of both. And I think it affects your career for sure. Like it was easier for me to get my name out there because it was a smaller city. And I do think that there was some of that, let's pull together because it was smaller, but I didn't know any of them. Like this was all
Yeah.
there was no connection at all. And I think there's some good people out there. But then on the flip side, now I'm growing and we're building these bigger homes, but I'm not in this big city where there's the clientele coming, all the time with those. And so we're kind of filling that hole where it was super great starting out, and now like we're growing
What
and wanting
wh-
to.
what are the main industries of Twin Falls? Do you have vacation? People are coming to the mountains. Is there skiing nearby, or why are people living in Twin Falls?
Food. We're the Silicon Valley of food is Twin Falls. So we've got lots of factories and all of that in this area. We do have Sun Valley, which is really close to us, which is the big ski town. So we may end up there sooner or later, but making sure all of our foundations are really good before we expand.
And when you first started, I think you had said you built like 5 homes on spec, and then you started building customs after that. Were those more in the starter? Like, what price range were those homes in, and kind of where are you at now?
Yeah, they started around 500 to my last spec was just under a million. And I love doing spec homes. Mandy's my designer partner. She had like full creative control. And there was no client calls late at night and stresses, where I'm like, oh no, I gotta figure this out before the morning and get back to them. So we did really enjoy that. It was nice learning too. Like I never would have taken on a client for my first house, or my first
It's
four
it's ki-
houses.
it's it's almost kind of hard to, right? Because I mean, it's hard enough already to talk about imposter syndrome, right? Where it's like after you've done
Hmm.
something long enough, you're supposed to be a professional, but like, I've been doing this for 20 years, and while I guess I am a professional, it's still like I still find ways to learn so much more that in some ways you don't feel like a subject matter. I don't know if I wonder if anyone ever feels like they know it all. I'm guessing the answer to that question is no. But I guess where I'm going with this is like as a spec home builder, it probably not only is easier, but it's also just going to be more seamless. Because can you imagine having to do a custom build for a first time client? They'd be like,
Oh.
what is this? You're like, I don't even know what that means. Or like, I mean, it's not exactly going to be a reassuring thing, but it's kind of a catch 22 because how do you get experience if someone doesn't hire you?
Hmm.
And in your case, you obviously, did it on spec.
Yeah. Which went super well. We love that. And then the interest rates hit, and I'm like, oh, that's how builders get in trouble. They get really cocky, they put in a bunch of specs, and then something changes. And so luckily we had been doing like one client at a time for the couple of years leading up to that. And so we had already started some of those processes with clients and figuring out that system. And it's we're fine tuning it a lot, but we switched all the way back to just custom, or not back. We switched to client based building, and just now we're starting our first spec in a while.
And when you did those originally, that was just you were taking. I assume you had to do personal notes because you didn't really have a business or a book of business. So you just probably put your
Hmm.
own money up and went to a bank and said, "I'm going to build a home, and here's my business plan or whatever." And you just borrowed whatever the interest rate was on a month to month basis.
Yeah, and you're new. They don't trust you. You don't have any reputation, so I had to put down way more money. I had to higher interest rate. Like it was it's hard to get started. It really
It's
is. Like there's a
it's
big barrier of entry.
it's very difficult. Now when you do, I know it was about a year ago that you did your first development. I think it was roughly what,
Yeah.
14 lots. Where's the development at now?
We just finished construction. We're
On
really
the
frozen.
roads or like
Hmm.
so so you
Yeah.
haven't built any homes, like, so the development is through
Mm-mm.
platting, you've done the city, sewer, water, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Yep. Everything's through that process. We're ready to build. Now we're just gonna wait for weather, and hoping to get a lot of them sold in the spring. Like there's chatter, things are looking up. We're excited about that.
How
But
do you have any, lot holds or any,
mhm.
design agreements now that you're kinda working on?
We do, not as many as we were hoping to be at this point, honestly, but it's been quiet. Everything's a little bit quiet in our area and just now starting to pick up again. So I think it's going to be really great timing, where of course in my mind I wanted to have them all spoken for before they were done. And
Right.
the timing wasn't quite right, but I think this is going to be really great and bring us some really great clients and homes to build in the future.
A year ago when interest rates went to like 7, 8%, and not that they're that much better now, what did you see in terms of client pullback? Um,
Hmm.
just because, the building cycle is longer. So, if you just started some homes, you might have a year or a year and a half, or 8 months. It all depends on the size of your home. What have you experienced over the last year, and what does your outlook look like for 24 from what you're seeing?
Yeah, I felt like right away everything lower income stopped, and we were just fine for a long time after that. And then I'd say the last like 6 months it's been pretty quiet, and some of that might just be timing and all of that. But we're starting to get calls again, which is crazy. It's
Yeah.
January. This is when we're supposed to be quiet, but I think everyone's sick of it. Like they've held on as long as they could with where they were at, and there's rumors of all the interest rates coming down. I think they're just wanting to get that process started, which
You
is smart. I keep telling people like get in, let's design now. It doesn't mean we have to break ground right away, but then you're ready if interest rates drop.
I mean, it's kind of that design funnel, right? So, as the principals of our companies, if you're not getting designs on a regular basis, at some point, the bus is going to stop on the back end. And even though your projects are longer, I noticed a year ago, typically December, January, February are pretty quiet here. And then I always say the first sunny day in March, it's like 35, 40 degrees. Everyone's like, oh, it's summer's right around the corner. And in Minnesota, that's still another 2 months away. But anyway, they're
Yeah.
very excited for the sunshine. And but that didn't happen this year till like June. So I would say we had like
Hmm.
a 3 month delay. And and even so, we had a couple pull off that were ready to done. We started them this summer, this fall, and then we had two just recently actually that canceled and said we're gonna wait a year. And
Yeah.
so, which wasn't great. I mean, a small company like us, when you lose half your big homes, it really disrupts the apple cart. And so
Hmm.
um anyway, building is always cyclical. In my years, you see it up and down, and it's just, yeah, it's another one of those cycles. And but yet, I'm very optimistic for 24.
Yeah.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of good things happening here in the spring, and there's a lot of energy right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree.
One of the questions I had for you, because I'm actually looking at a smaller development, builder approached me. They've got 6 lots. They want to do three. All right, basically, I'd split it, 3 and 3, which is about right for me. I don't want to get too far over my skis. And unlike you, I don't like doing specs. I did specs early on, and I learned the hard way that I'm just not a good spec builder. I tend to do things too. I just do it too nice. And I think
Yeah,
maybe you're
yeah.
smart because it sounds like Mandy
Nope.
makes all your selections. Maybe she's better and more thrifty as a business
Nope, nope,
partner.
she's
Nope, she's
not.
not.
She is not. Mandy, if you're listening, cut back.
Because that's the problem with knowing all the good stuff. You're like, well, surely the
Yeah.
client would want this. Surely the client would. So I've always
Mm-hmm.
found that I'm better at, kind of helping the client navigate and kind of, well, I mean, essentially selling or, elevating the house so that it's even nicer. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
not very good at going the other way. So anyway, I haven't done a spec in, oh man, 13, 15, 2008. Yeah, so
Wow.
2008 was the last time I
Yeah.
did it, which was great timing. 2008 was an awesome time
Yeah.
to build. So maybe from a development standpoint, how have you handled investment now that you're an established business? Do you still borrow money from the bank as you're doing development? Do you have any private investors? Do you self-fund it? How do you navigate, a development sounds great, but you have 2 jobs. Now you're
Mm-hmm.
a land developer and, traditionally a land developer wants to make money. They want to sell their lots and move on. And the builder in you
Mm-hmm.
wants to probably build a beautiful 14 lot. Hey, you drive into this community, it's a Megco construction home. Like
Yes.
this community
Yes.
oozes my vision of it. How do you balance those 2 hats?
Um okay, those two hats fight a lot. A lot. Like the developer just wants to get rid of them, make money, move on, buy the next one. Like there's land to buy. Like you got to get that investment moving. But just like you're describing, like we just want it to be like this just beautiful street you drive down, just the experience of all of it. We love that. And the best advice I was given was you're wearing two different hats. Don't ever wear them at the same time. So, yeah, if
I lo
you're developing the land, get your land development hat on.
Clearly, they haven't seen Sherlock Holmes's old, that duck bill. I don't even know what the hat's called, where it has a bill front and
Yeah,
back. I think Sherlock
yeah.
Holmes wore, one hat that had 2 bills. So, maybe next time someone says that you need to go buy one of those and flip it on.
Just oh yeah.
Man,
He's pretty cool though. I'll have to work up to that. Right
I
now,
I
I'm just one hatting it.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of curious to see how sales go. I'll have to check in after the builder show, and maybe later this summer we'll have to either bring you back on to get a progress update. But I definitely want to
Yeah.
stay tuned on how that goes for you. I have a whole bunch more business questions for you. As you and I know, we had about 7 pages of notes, and we knew we were only going to get to a portion of it. So we'll some of that stuff we'll save for another time. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because you mentioned it on your website, your LinkedIn profile, several places, is you were one of only 2 women in your manufacturing and engineering program. Like clearly you're not imitated or intimidated by being in a man's world. I'm thinking of engineer or as these welders. I mean, even on your site you're like, hey, I can handle a welder, like nobody's business. What have you learned from that experience? How has that helped you? Because unfortunately construction is a fairly male dominated industry, and I love seeing women in construction. There's a local company here called Wink Women in Construction, and they're a really powerful lobby, and I love seeing it across the country. Walk us a little bit through how you felt, maybe even early on, how you've been kind of set up to succeed, or a little bit more about your experience in that department.
Yeah, for sure. I um I think it might have been a little bit of growing up in Alaska,
Yeah.
honestly, that kind of like makes you not worry about that as much. I was the only girl on my hockey team growing up. Like I had the pink gloves, the pink helmet, just all in, and just I don't know. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was a little bit of growing up there too. But it hasn't been an issue for me or intimidating. How you were asking on that?
Yeah.
Not that it's not intimidating. I totally have imposter syndrome and all the just normal things that I think everyone goes through. I know when I was talking about going into it, my dad was like, his baby girl is gonna go into construction, and he's like, "You're gonna get taken advantage of. You're too nice. Get out of there. Like, don't do it." And so yeah, I mean, it's a real thing. But I think it also gives me a lot of advantages where, like, on the client side, we've talked about before, the generally, what is it, like 80% of the decisions are made by the female.
Yeah, I
And
mean, 100%. If you can't relate to women, and if you can't relate to your buyers, who happen
mhm,
to be, I mean, I heard this crazy stat that like all NFL purchases, like 78% of all NFL merchandise was bought by women. And the idea was, and it never even dawned on me, I'm not a big NFL guy, but even so, the idea is like, the spouses were buying it for their husband, for their kids, and for themselves too. But like, it was just like, it kind of reframes people's thinking. In a home business, I often laugh because like when I remodeled my home, I went to my wife and I said, "Hey, honey, I really think this would be a really interesting thing to do." And she's like, "I don't want to do that." And I said, and my line was like, "Well, people do pay me for my opinion." And she goes, "Well, I'm not paying you." So even a builder doesn't get to build his own house. I mean,
yeah.
so I mean, anyway, to your point, relating to women and also making them feel comfortable, I have to believe that's been a huge asset for you.
Yeah, it really has. Just like we are talking before, like it's a big intimidating process and they're having to step into that man's world. They're having to talk to their rough builder and rough trades and standing up for what they really want. And so they just, I think I have an advantage there where I can talk to them and I'm not intimidating to ask, like, what is a fascia? Tell me what a fascia is. What's this decision I'm making? And so I think I can just connect in a little bit more compassion where maybe, and there's great guys all over that do that, but I think maybe they assume or that I will
I,
be a little
I,
bit easier to approach.
I think you're accurate on that. I would also imagine, how often do you share your story about being a mom and having to take over a construction company to build your own house? That would, I mean, I mean, granted, it's a long, I wouldn't want you to do that right now, like year one, but like the fact that you did that 7 years ago, that would be really
Yeah.
reassuring to me as a client. Like, wow, she's got, I mean, I say this about all Alaskans. If you can't live in Alaska for very long and not have a figured it out factor, because
Yeah.
you're kind of abandoned by the rest of the world, and you're up in this inclement climate. You got to figure it out, and so you figured it out in the business world pretty quick. Do you share that story quite a bit with your clients?
I do, and maybe not the whole story, but the experiences I learned from that, not just the building side, but being on the client side too, where I bring up the fascia comment because I didn't know what it was, and he was asking me over the phone like what color we're painting it right now. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Can I come over and have you point at it and tell me? And so a lot of and they go through the emotional process too, where they're like, I'm building this house, it's too big, my neighbors are going to say things, or is it too big for my family? And so being able to have gone through those emotions, those experiences, I think that really helps too, because I can, oh yeah, when I did this, that is how I felt, and this helped, or this,
Yeah,
all those things.
that's very empathetic of you. I imagine your ability to connect would be amazing. I Empathy is something I'm working on. I can't decide if it's a cop out because I'm a man, I'm bad at it, or if I'm just Mark Williams bad at it. It is one of my resolutions, mainly one that my wife would really like me to learn at. So I am working on empathy, but you just described it. I'm like, I recognize it. I think the first step is recognizing it, right? So I'm
Yeah.
like,
Oh yeah.
I'm listening to you talking about like, oh, that's what empathy is. You went through it, you related to your
Hmm.
client, and now you understand where she's coming from. I'm like, okay. So it turns out
Yes.
besides being a builder, you can also be my therapist as well, Meg. So,
I'll give you an insider scoop.
yeah,
Female build or not female builders, females building their own home. They just want you to say you're not crazy all the time. That's just all they want is some reassurance. Like you're not crazy. This is okay. This is
yeah.
okay. You're not crazy.
All
So
right, I'll on my next walkthrough, I'll practice that and we'll see how it goes. How do you feel like I had mentioned this? If I did 10 calls, this month with other builders that I network with, I bet 60-70% of them would be women-owned businesses. And I don't know if that just speaks to my personal friend group, if that speaks to just people who will actually answer my phone call. uh, but like, do you find that if you are going to make 10 calls to other builders, and not just in your builder 20, but just this is just more of a, just kind of an observation. Where I'm going with this question is I feel like women in construction, women-owned businesses, they're way more apt to network and to share and to talk about their experience than some men are. Do you think that's true or not?
Yeah, I do think it's true. At least in my own life, like I mean, I told you before we started, like nothing's really off limits. Like you're not gonna make me feel uncomfortable. This is my story. I own it. Like it's benefited me. It's hurt me. Like all the things, the growth that's come from it. And I think maybe we recognize that a little bit better. And sometimes there's that pride wall, where you don't want to let everyone see what's behind the curtains and the struggles and the hardships. But that's the kind of person you want to go to get real answers and to feel like you can say, hey, I'm going through this tough thing, or I have this question I don't know the answer to. Like, what ideas do you have? And I think that that's part of it.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about. I was speaking with Morgan Molitor the other day, and it sounds like you and Allison and her are going to do that Build Her retreat. I'm pretty intrigued about that. We had actually talked about doing something somewhat in this vein, but it never really got off the ground. Tell the audience what is this Build Her retreat that you guys are looking at doing?
It's still pretty hush hush. So
Oh,
we're
can't talk about it. I like it.
But we are trying to give an opportunity to gather women who are in construction. Just, I don't know. When I was, I don't know, a few years into my career, I went down to the house she built. Have you heard of that?
No.
It's this epic project they did. There's in the NHB, there's the Professional Women in Building, and the Salt Lake or Utah group went and built a house, all females. So trades from the beginning to the end. It was a general who was a female, tilers, drywallers, framers, and the entire house was built from beginning to end by women. There's a book off of it, which you should totally get for your girls. Like it's an awesome book.
What's it called?
Just The House She Built.
Okay.
And it just like they did it to try and teach like women can do this. You can get into this industry. Like there's amazing jobs that you could control your own schedule. Like you can have a family and take only so many tile jobs and control what you want to do, don't want to do. And there's great money. Like people overlook it for, go to college, become a this, become a that. And there's amazing opportunities in construction. And so they pulled that together. They built the whole house. They've gotten tons of national recognition for it. It was an amazing project, but they put it in the Parade of Homes. And I got to go down, meet a lot of the women that were in it. And I was like starstruck. I'm like, these are my people. These are my unicorns. Like I don't know, like I felt a giddy excitement and got to talk to them. And so we want to provide that same experience to other builders in the area and
Oh, that's
help
amazing.
them.
How many years ago was that you went there?
Oh, it's got to be like 2 or 3 years now.
Okay.
Yeah,
So that's
probably
amazing.
3 or 4.
I wrote it down. I'll get the book. My daughter, it's funny. I'm 43 and, God willing, maybe I'll build another 15, 20 years. I really don't want to still be building when my daughter would be of age to take over the business because she'd be amazing for one thing. I would love that. But I'm just like, I don't
Yes.
really want to work into my 60s and 70s, to kind of carry that on. And it's hard to know whether they'll have any interest, but she would definitely be highly capable. I always say, man, negotiating against your kids is way harder than negotiating with your clients. So, well, just to be respectful of your time, maybe just one last question. The rest of 24, what are some things that you're really excited about?
Oh, we kind of in the same boat as you. We had 2 big projects last year get postponed to this year. And those have me really excited now. One I think I've talked to you about before is the geothermal house, which
Yeah.
I'm so excited about. It's right on the river. We've got 130 degrees bubbling out of the ground right next to it. We've got 60 degrees in another spring. It's just like this crazy geological everything's happening there. They're bow fishing for carp right off the dock because they want to come out to the hot water, and it's just a crazy, unique, cool project. So we're over the moon excited about that one.
Well, that's really exciting. When do you hope to start that one? Here in the spring when things get a little warmer?
Looking at June or July.
Okay.
on
All
that
right.
one.
So are
Yeah.
you, and how far into like pre-con would you be on that one? Because what's it like when you have a job, it pulls for a year and now you're kind of back
Mhm.
into it, asking for a friend here. How do you re-engage in it? And was it based on interest rates, or how did you along the way kind of say like, hey, if you want to start now, we're ready, or did you just kind of give them their space?
We were pretty strategic. They were wanting to go, so there were some situations that more with permitting that kept us from
I see.
starting, and so uh, I do feel like we have to go through everything again. Just like we were talking about with that poll plan, where I'm like, oh, that was really great. We did it. We have it figured out and documented, but there's been a lot of time in between, and clients make changes in between, and so just rehashing, going through the design, going through the project again, kind of restarting, but not. It won't take as much time, I guess. I just don't
Right.
want to miss anything that's
When
in the
I
last while.
don't you feel like when you're in building for a specific client, you have the pulse of it, like you're in it.
Mm-hmm.
But you go 60, 90 days where you're not in it every day. And it's not a con. It's not that you don't care about them or their home, but like your attention is drawn to your other projects, or, trying to get a job, or working on
Mm-hmm.
architects or designing or whatever else you're doing. It's just like I feel like when you're in it, you've got the pulse of it, and it doesn't take very much memory recall to pull up some of those more important details. So then it feels like in some ways you're almost like starting over, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
only been a short time.
Which is really hard for clients. They are 100% focused on that plan, but they forget that we have to focus on multiple plans. And so, yeah, I really
Mhm.
do feel like I have to get back in there and just like get myself going again, so that I don't
Yeah.
look like I'm behind the ball or not caring as much as I should be.
Yeah. Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm really excited to start reconnecting with all those people around the country that I've gotten to meet through the Contractor Coalition and through other, obviously social medias. I love the idea that you even got through it, from Cardinal Crest. I hope to have those guys on at some point as well. But I'll see you. I'll see you in Vegas at the Builder Show, and I look forward to hearing about profitability on your panel.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark, so much for having me. You
Very good.
are incredible.
Very good. Have a great one. Appreciate it. Thanks for listening to the Curious Builder podcast. If you like what you listen to, please give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It really means a lot. It's a great way for us to just understand what you like about the podcast and what we can keep doing. So like and review, and please share with your friends and family. Find out more at curiousbuilderpodcast.com.